We'll go ahead and call to order the Public Works and Sustainability Committee meeting of City Council. Tonight is February 27th. Time is just after 6 o'clock. We have present myself, Chairman of the committee, and Councilman Baker, member of the committee, and we expect Tom Bullock will join us shortly, who is also on the committee. Also in attendance tonight, we have members of the administration and the rec department. Thank you so much for taking your time out of this off Monday for y'all, but traipsing out here on a committee night for us to a rainy one, no less. Without too much further ado, the real only topic we have tonight, well, first I'll go ahead and we do have minutes from the last meeting. I'll move that those are approved without necessity of a reading. Hearing no objection, those are approved. And then also the only item on our agenda tonight is the resolution, I believe. It is, yes, the resolution 2023-07 of City Council to approve the changes to pool fees. This was introduced at the last meeting. So without too much else, does anybody in the administration have anything they'd like to present on this, or are we going to welcome our friends at the rec department? Totally up to you. Okay. Okay. Great. Planning department, anything else to add? Public Works, great. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to the recreation department to walk us through these fee changes, and we'll go from there. Thank you, Leslie, for joining us. And go ahead and step to the mic and just state your full name. That should be enough. No, I think there's a button there. It's finicky. I'm sorry.
I hit the wrong one. Oh, I hit the wrong button, so if it falls over, I apologize.
No worries.
Leslie Favor-Krogman. I am the coordinator of the Lakewood Community Recreation and Education Department Indoor Track and Fitness Facility.
All right.
So I just gave you the whole shebang. So I believe I did email my presentation, and there was some updates that I did email again today. And what we have here is just kind of going over the outdoor pool entrance fees. So on the first slide of the presentation, it basically says the 2022 entrance fees compared to the proposed fees for both of the pools. These fees are...
Let me go ahead and stop you real quick. Madam Clerk, do we have a copy of that presentation? Okay. Let's see if we can dig that up.
Here you go. I'll just give you mine.
Okay. That should be good enough for now. Okay. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Bullock. We're just getting started. You didn't miss much. If anyone who has that, if you want to forward it to clerk@citycouncil. Okay, thank you. Okay. We'll
I emailed it.
just give it a minute. We have a full hour for this. We could take a minute to figure it out.
No, I got it. I'm good. Yep, I'm good.
Yeah, but there, I'll take that.
There. So the first slide is just pictures of how lovely Foster Pool looks right now as it's under construction, and obviously before the rain hit today. So I'll wait till you guys get to the second page.
Just give him a minute. Great to be amongst the living. Yeah. Why don't we just wait? Perfect. Thank you. Chris. No worries. Sometimes it's hard to know who to email what to, so thanks for bearing with us. Please continue.
Okay, so on page 2, outdoor pool entrance fees, you can see what the entrance fees were for 2022 and what the proposed fees are for 2023. Now, during this process, this was a collaborative effort, and the city administration team asked us to look at rates in the past and obviously look at surrounding communities. So as you can see, it's not too large of a rate increase, and throughout our city and our recreation department monthly meetings, we have been sharing this information as we've been progressing. So I'm just going to continue on and then have questions, obviously take questions later. So on the next slide, the outdoor pool lessons and rentals, the swim lessons, and I'm just giving you a whole bunch of information, is that the swim lessons, we have 4 classes for $25 during the course of a week, and obviously has a resident and non-resident rate. It is different from the past because during a lot of our efforts and communicating with our patrons and community members, how we had it was over the course of 3 weeks and 9 lessons, it just became too much. It was a lot of a time commitment, and a lot of people were missing almost half of the lessons. So with help from Matt and his staff, this is one thing that we have condensed to, and people are in favor of this. The rental fees, we obviously have to keep the difference between Bex and Foster. So the Bex rate is, $175 for the slide in the main pool for 90 minutes. The staff cost, as you can see, we broke it down. That's $160 for that time. Foster, a lot of people don't want to rent out the entire pool. That's how it's been in the past. They would, for example, rent out a shallow end and then rent out the diving bay, or they just rent out one of the shallow ends on the east or west side. So now you have the pool, which obviously presume that a lot of people who do rent our pools have kids, so it'll be the slide, and for the slide pool, which is the 2 slides that'll be going in and that pool that it empties out into, and $150 for the lap pool. A lot of people call that the recreation pool. There may be some confusion as this goes on, but the lap pool obviously is the 50-meter, 25-meter distance, looks like the L. Foster is $12 an hour for less than 6 lanes, and because we do have people who want to rent it out just for doing laps, believe it or not, and it's $10 an hour for more than 6 lanes. And the reason why is that we have to have more lifeguards. You have to make sure that you have the lane lines in, and it depends if they want to do a long course or a short course. Long course is east and west, and that's the 50 meters. Short course, north and south, and that's 25. And then it's $9 an hour for a 25-yard lane, including the 6-lane rental. So, I know this is a lot of information we're providing to you, but this is just how we are proposing to break it down and how we are looking at this moving forward. On the next slide, again, it's outdoor pool fee rationale. Obviously, you're going to ask some questions how we came up with this. Just this past year with the high school pool, chemicals went up 60%. That pool is 300,000 gallons. Foster pool is easily double that size. So you're going to have to compensate for the chemicals. And plus, the amount of chemicals that are put in Foster pool far exceeds what is used up at the high school pool because of the number of people in the water. The increase in the minimum wage rates, that's going up every year. It was $9.30, it just jumped up to $10.10. That is obviously a dramatic increase, and that is increasing every year. So on the first of every year that comes in. So as we are looking to maintain and sustain our lifeguards, those rates are going to be increasing as well. With our lifeguards, they also require a couple of different certifications that they have to pay to be certified, and then they have to pay for the recertification of these, in addition to getting first aid, CPR, AED certified. And we have an in-house instructor that does teach these Red Cross certificates, and one of them is actually sitting right next to me in the yellow. We did look at a comparison of our communities. I did provide that as we looked in the surrounding communities. It is not in the presentation, but it was added into it. So as you can see, we just looked at those for comparison. Our proposed fees are what we believe is good for Lakewood. And as we were looking at that, we haven't touched our fees since 2012. Actually, I think it might have even been before that. The last time we actually had a conversation, we wanted to get rid of the 50 cents, and we were told, no, we're just going to keep it the same. The reason why we wanted to get rid of the 50 cents is that bringing in a $50 bag of change every 2 weeks to the bank became a little bit cumbersome, especially if the bag broke and everything went everywhere, and that has happened. And we don't have any coin lockers anymore. We do not provide change like we used to do in the past. So the patron entrances, believe it or not, the season entrances, 75% of the people that visit our pools are Lakewood residents. 25% are not. And for one of the other things that we are looking to do is that we would like to try and establish a long-term vision for rates. Down the line, we hope, and it would be very exciting if we also were looking at Beck's Pool. So these proposed rates, they could be indefinite, they can be until Beck's Pool, they can be revised. I think it would be prudent and beneficial for us all if we say we're going to look at these every 5 years, just so that people understand that, you know, not changing rates for almost 11 years it's an anomaly. And also for the opportunity costs, we're all here for providing opportunity for our community. This isn't a revenue generator. This is allowing people to come visit and go into a pool. However, with all of the different bullets that I have provided, we have to just make sure that what we are doing is we're not looking to make money. You're almost looking to slightly offset the cost, because the cost is going to be significant with the change in this pool. And one of the things we were touching upon with rates, and you know, when we set our rates, we look at other communities and see what they are doing. And right now, we are still on the low end of what we provide our lifeguard fees. However, people do enjoy working at our pools. A lot of our staff members are Lakewood kids, for lack of a better term, and college kids who did go away to school and are coming home for the summer. So we have to make it enticing. We can't be the lowest because we will lose them. As you know, we were talking with Westlake and Bay Pools over the summer. They couldn't retain their lifeguards because they weren't paying them enough, or they weren't giving them hours, or they just weren't having a good time. And we have been very fortunate to be able to retain these workers for a significant amount of time, and that includes our pool managers, our pool assistant managers, our lifeguards, our learn to swim instructors, our cashiers, and our pool attendants. So that's,
Thank you.
That's
Real quick, kind of working backwards, smaller thing, but maybe I just misunderstood or
Sure.
didn't hear your full. You said that we hadn't changed rates in so many years. What was that referring to? I know we updated rates in 2019.
no,
That was just, we kept them the same then?
we
Okay.
did. Yeah, it was just an assessment to see
That's
if it was
one.
time, and we hadn't changed the pools. Like nothing really had changed, so they just maintained.
That's the clarification I needed. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Very good. Would you say the majority of the, go, let's see, 60% past season? So is the majority of the increase really to justify where we're at with the current pools, how they're set up? Is it really, what's the driver, I guess? You'd mentioned a couple things like the chemicals and the wage costs. I would imagine our pools are not breaking even. They're subsidized pretty heavily.
Correct.
By both the school district and the city, depending on where,
So
what part of the.
The entrance fees are deposited directly to the city.
Okay.
With those schools, we don't make any money off the pools. What we do is we provide an invoice to the city to basically take us to zero for personnel costs.
Got it. And do we know what that is just about every year
How much was it last? It was 65,000.
for both pools?
Yes.
Okay. Is this increase aimed at helping to, that's directly deposited, so that's not going to change then, that amount that you're billing the city? This is just,
It will,
okay,
because the wage rate increase.
okay, got it. So it'll go up. And this
Correct.
is meant on our side to offset some of that invoice that we're going to get. It's going to be higher, thus we're going to have more fees on our side.
Correct.
Got it. Does the administration have any thoughts on this? Have they gone through these numbers and we feel good about? I'm just curious.
The administration, including myself, we meet once a month. We've gone over this for months now, knowing that we wanted to see, as the slideshow points out, what do other communities do in the wake of the major capital project going on over there. So the data collection, from my mind, is the underlying evidence for which, you know, Leslie and the team here are coming to you. The mayor is kind of agnostic on this. I mean, we're just trying to be competitive in the wake of many different interests from many different council members and other people in the community. And I think the best thing we can show you is what others around us are doing.
Yeah.
That's where I'll finish.
Thank you. No, appreciate that. I'll stop there for the moment. If my colleagues have questions, I think they do, and then I can jump in again and we'll keep going. And thank you again for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Yep, but the mic would be great.
Thank you, Leslie and the administration. I know, I think in 2019, when we went over this and assessed and kept them the same, the discussion was in May. So I think we appreciate February discussion timeframe because it gives the ability to kind of think about it. And as Chief of Staff Story said, the administration has been working on it, and they meet monthly with you all. But for a lot of us up in council, this is kind of our first foray into this. So it's helpful to have some of the background. And thank you for the relationship. I mean, I know growing up in Lakewood, I guess I didn't realize that the schools operated the pool, but you get in city government, you realize it a little bit more. Question for the administration. So in the round numbers, what do we pull in revenue every year from? So the school district bills us $65,000 for staff. That sounds like it's going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
What do we pull in?
It's roughly, I want to say it's roughly half. I mean, it offsets. It's been changing year to year. So we've been. I can get you definitive numbers because we do go sit down with the treasurer and we go over everything. I don't want to give a number offhand. I have something in the back of my head, but I don't want to say. Sean, do you have it? Oh, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
So, good evening, council members. I did request this information from Peter Richter, our finance director, who gets it from the school district, and Ken Zeman, the school district treasurer. So just the total revenue. Now, total revenue includes rentals for the rentals, the registrations, it's all in. The revenue has varied from 2017, it was $197,000 to the highest over that 6-year span through 2022 was last year, was $230,000 in revenue. Of that, Foster and Beck's admissions, I'll just use last year's as the example. So of the 230, 138, little over $138,000 was Foster and Beck's admissions. I believe that is just daily admissions because there's another line for tags and passes of $83,000. So $210,000, $15,000 in admissions with permits or with passes and admission.
And I assume there's other costs associated. So, and I don't know, it doesn't look like the finance department is here. And I'm just curious, and I think it helps me understand this issue a little bit more. So if we're roughly bringing in $200,000 in revenue every year, and we're cutting a check to the school district for roughly $65,000, let's say it's $80,000 next year. I assume there's lots of water costs, lots of other costs associated. Do we kind of code those to the pool, or is that more, it's just kind of in the bucket of public works more generally?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
So what other costs do we account for in the pool? Because those numbers right there show that we're making money, but I don't think we are.
No. So just an example is last year, roughly, we budgeted $165,000 just in chemicals and other services, which would include, pumps, things of that nature. And then you tie in electricity and water. So yes, it isn't a revenue-based system once you start working all the numbers in. And as Leslie said, and in talks within the Public Works Department, it's fair to say that the rate of chemicals along with pumps, filters like that have dramatically increased. The 50 to 60% is a fair number.
That's helpful. Thank you, Director Gordon. Because when I think about it, and I wasn't sure if the school district was buying the chemicals and then charging back. It sounds like it's just labor that they're charging, or labor and maybe associated fees. And that's really helpful. The other thing, and I know, Leslie, we had a conversation about it a little bit last year, is there any way we can work with the school district to get some sort of group permitting process where, for example, in my day job, if, more than 15 people come to some facility or 20 people, we say we want you to have a permit. The permit doesn't necessarily cost anything, but at least allows us to know for staffing purposes that at 2 p.m. a bus of 30 kids are going to show up, and that might affect, how we operate our operations. Is that something that you guys have looked into, that you would be interested in this? I mean, because if it's a question of resources and providing the resources for software or for some other type of thing, I'd like to know that so we could consider it and potentially do it.
The only groups that we are aware of attending are, for example, the Recreation Department's Kids Connection. They do come down, and we know the size of the group that's coming down, so that is planned for. We have Lakewood Community Cares, which is another all basic, and Kids Connection is Lakewood City School students, like 99.9% of them. Lakewood Community Care, which is in Lincoln, and they will walk down, and they will come down for swimming lessons, which obviously does not affect any of the open pool times, or they'll come down to swim, so we do have those numbers when they do come down. The other group is Lakewood Catholic Academy. So those are the only three major groups, and they do communicate with us so that we know that they're coming. Any other large group that approaches the door, we don't really allow in unless contacted. So I know that people will see the buses pulling up in Lakewood Park. Most of those buses, they're not there to use the pool. They're there to use the playground. So those are some of the things that Matt and I have been sitting down to discuss, to actually put it in policy, to have it in writing so it is available. And we plan to have that finished in a significant amount of time before the pool even operates. Our next brochure comes out at the end of March, beginning of April. So that's literally tomorrow, because it seems like time is going that fast. And we will have that in place, because one of the things that we were discussing is having larger signs up that have these policies, procedures, rules, not only inside the building, but also on the exterior, and be a little bit more proactive, especially now getting it out so that people can see that.
And I appreciate, you know, because I wish I would have known you were do the community analysis, because I kind of dug in a little bit myself. And, you know, I agree Lakewood's unique, right? We have a unique setup, so we kind of need to do what's best for Lakewood. And I kind of see what you're doing. And I do think that while past behavior is an indicator of future behavior, you know, that would assume that we wouldn't have a new, you know, $5 million pool or whatever. And so I think some of the things we can expect this summer are maybe not necessarily things that have happened in the previous summers. And that's where I was, you know, I'm thankful that this kind of conversation is happening now, and we're discussing it, you know, with ample time to think about it and give it a lot of good thought. And it's interesting to see what other communities do. Now, other communities, obviously some, like they have a rec center, so they kind of, and it's connected, so they kind of do it all together. And a lot of them allow some non-residents, but you have to be with a resident in order to do it. So I guess, you know, so you say 75% of the folks that use the pool are Lakewood residents. Is it like an ID, or how do you check, how does your staff check that one?
So when the people register, for example, for a pool pass, we take their address. When they come up, we take their address. A lot of times we do ask them for IDs, but a lot of people are like, well, I'm in a bathing suit. Where am I going to put an ID? Well, that's just an excuse. You have your phone, like, I mean, my little wallet, this is your life. And half the time they have their IDs in it. So we do check, but I can tell you we have a lot of frequent flyers. So like our staff knows, our cashiers have been there for 15 years. And a lot of them are just people who come in. I mean, we can, because obviously you're talking about past behavior dictates future behavior, we don't have a past behavior for this pool. So now Matt and I have been preparing, and I know everyone here as well, is that there's going to be a huge surge for the pool this year. Like that is my expectation. And that's a good thing. If there's not a surge and it's just like a gentle wave, I'll be great with that too. However, in our discussions, it has come up, all right, how are we going to check if they truly are Lakewood residents? And it may come down to, again, part of our policies, procedures, your first visit, if you haven't been here before and you don't pre-exist, you need to bring an ID.
Yeah, and I've noticed that some other communities say that, right? They're like, you need an ID or else you pay a different fee structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that type of consumer training would encourage them to bring their ID the next time that they come. And the only one, and I, you know, in digging in, and this is, I'm nitpicking here because I think you guys have done a really good job of kind of putting this together and be thoughtful about it, is some of them are interesting, right? Where there is for a single season pass, like there is, I think, a couple instances where we can stratify a little bit more between residents and non-residents and still be reasonable, which, as I understand, you know, some of the grants we've obtained for Lakewood Park, and this is more of a city issue, but we can't exclude non-residents, and I'm not saying we should exclude non-residents, but we can't have reasonable variations between residents and non-residents, because, you know, most of the capital money for the pool came from Lakewood residents. So, you know, one is that there is a little bit of stratification where I think our season pass for a single person is $90 if you're a non-resident. And I think that's fair. I think we can bump that a little. I mean, in Bay Village, So a resident of Bay Village, and this is, like I said, nitpicking, but I think it's something that we have justification to bump it if we want to, and I'm open to the conversation with everyone. If you live in Bay Village, you can pay $106 to get a season pass to your pool, or you can pay $90 as a non-resident of Lakewood to come to our pool. So I think we maybe have a little bit of room to stratify that a little bit more. I'm not saying we go outrageous, but I'm saying we could go up 10, 15, 20 bucks for a season pass. But interested in my other colleagues' thoughts on the matter.
Mr. Bullock, thank you. Mr. Baker.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Leslie and administration and team from the Board of Education and Rec Department. I'm sorry to make you repeat some things, just looking at your proposal. So it says our proposed fees are what's best for Lakewood, just starting from the biggest focus level and going backwards. It's best for Lakewood because, and what I'm driving at is, what are the guiding criteria that you're trying to accomplish here? Is it cost recovery? Is it employee retention?
I mean,
Is it-
it's a myriad of things. We have a brand-new pool. It's not just a square in the ground anymore. I'm a person that you pay for what you get. And we are still on the low end of fees, and the fees before were $350 an entrance. And just over time, these should have been gradually increased. So we have a brand-new amenity that we want to keep nice, and I believe people will be good with that. They'll probably be a little bit upset because anytime you increase the fee, you're always going to get some pushback, and that's all across the board. You know, I'm not looking at generating revenue. You know, as I stated earlier, it's an opportunity, but it's also a privilege to have this pool. And with the increase of wages, you know, this is just something that we're proposing. Council can say everyone can get in for free, you know, but the other thing is, you know, as Councilman Baker pointed out, you have other pools that, for example, Bay Pool was built in like 2006. And they're, you know, granted it is a different community, but look at their prices. Westlake Pool was just completed, I believe it was 19. And they blow us out of the water, and of course, like they didn't have a landlock issue like we did. But Avon Lake is the same as us, very kind of similar community, and they're paying the fees. So what it all boils down to me is that the admissions should have been increased over time. I know we're kind of making a leap, and again, you know, council can decide, you know, what you guys would like to do. We have a nice pool. I want people to appreciate it, and usually if people spend a little bit more, they're going to take care of it. You know,
Okay.
if we keep charging them $350.
Well, so first of all, thanks for the, analysis and thoughtful presentation. I'm glad. This is a helpful discussion, and quite frankly, Mr. Chair, if we don't, I don't think we should rush this decision. I'm just learning and thinking this through. I've got kids who are just beginning to go through this process, and they've been a client of this, but I'm not a heavy user of it, so I consider myself kind of new to the topic, believe it or not. Even though I've been around, I just haven't been a heavy pool user. But so I'm glad the administration's here too. So a couple of questions. If the fees don't collect a lot, so for example, when we get a lot of rain in a given season, as I understand it, rates go. Fewer people show up, we collect less at the gate. I guess a certain portion, I'd be curious as to how much of our revenue comes from the season pass in which people pay in advance so the rainy weather wouldn't affect that revenue versus at the gate, people are going when it's a nice, sunny, hot day and they want to cool off. But the real point is this, we have fixed costs, right, to maintain the staff and maintain the facilities. So you're paying whatever you're paying to the staff regardless, right? Whether it's a busy season or a not busy season, those
Correct.
are fixed costs, okay? And then for the administration, and I know Director Gordon, you're new here, but if there's graffiti, who fixes graffiti or equipment breaks or something
The
like
city.
that? The city. So that's the city's going to pay for that, and we're going to do a good job of maintaining that regardless, correct?
That is correct, and I do want to say one thing I think we need to keep in mind is the costs for pool operations have increased.
Have increased, okay.
Um,
And so if we did like a golf course does, where we try to capture the full cost of running the enterprise at the gate, would we be charging these amounts, or you'd add a couple of digits? Yeah, so it'd be very expensive. So in other words, the whole point of a pool is not that it's going to be a self-sustaining operation. It's an amenity that the community offers its residents. So it's subsidized, correct?
Yeah, and again, I mean, at least on our end in the Public Works Department, we're focused on the operation of the pool itself. In that, in our research prior to this meeting, and once we knew that the rate increase is on the table, we started to look a little bit deeper into the cost to operate the pool. And there has been significant increase in pumps, motors, chemical feeders, the filter system, you name it.
Sure, right.
So, you know, over the past few years, as we all know with supply chain, that number I'm no forecaster, but I got a feeling that number is only going to increase as more and more people start to get outside more.
Yeah, so that's good to understand. So the city's going to want and ought to, and I would demand that you do it if you weren't already on top of it, maintain a very high-quality, safe, pristine, safe in every sense. There's no sharp edges. Somebody can get a cut on. We've got appropriate levels of chlorine and all the rest, and that we remove any maintenance problems. So you're on top of that. We're going to pay those costs regardless. You're going to have staff who do a good job of maintaining the safety in the pool. That may go up because, as some of my colleagues have been saying, we're going to have such a fantastic facility there. I bet you more people show up even on the rainy days because you're going to have, you know, half the pool now is Great Wolf Lodge, so I don't have to drive to Sandusky and pay too much money, you know, to that indoor water park. We've got it right here in Lakewood. So we're going to be really successful. So then the question is, what are we doing with these fees? And so that's where the fair, are we leaning in favor of access? Are we trying to bottle down access a little bit so that we don't have too many people? I'm actually asking these questions with an open mind, and it's helpful to me to hear the thought that all of you and my colleagues are putting into this. I'll put my cards on the table. I lean strongly towards public access. I tend to not like it when I hear the arguments made that, hey, this is just for Lakewood, it should only be for us. Now, that said, there's a middle ground, and we do have high demand for Lakewood Park. I guess we should be talking about both pools. Most of my comments have been directed at Foster Pool because that's the one at the busiest park and also is getting the new facelift. So I don't quite. I guess I approach these conversations with an open mind. I'm glad that you've done the analysis. I'm not opposed at all to a rate increase. I understand that costs are going up and all the rest. But what I really want to understand is what's the outcome we're trying to accomplish. You know, one you mentioned, Leslie, is important, which is staff retention. If we can't attract and keep, you know, a good lifeguard crew, that's something we have to work on. But do we think that we're going to be okay in the coming season in that regard?
Absolutely.
Okay.
With what we've done, I can tell you right now, we've been hitting up, we have our own little job fair at the high school and lunch, and we handed out all of our applications within the past 2 weeks. We've had 25 kids apply.
Okay, great.
And part of that is because we're going to have new Foster Pool.
Okay.
So not only is the pool itself a draw for staff, and Matt has already had like 3 training sessions for training lifeguards, and part of it is that, you know, hey, if you're training with us, we're not going to charge you the training fee because then you're going to work for us over the summer. So internally, I mean, we're not recouping any of this. We just want to make sure that we put out the best product anywhere. So when you're talking about the fees, yes, our wage rates are increasing, the chemical costs are increasing, and wage rates all across the board are increasing. But I also believe, and as I stated earlier, you know, this cost is not to be a deterrent at all.
Okay.
If we wanted it to be a deterrent, I would have recommended $14 to get in for a resident.
Sure.
which
And
I
as a
did
good,
not.
so first of all, I appreciate your point about no quarters and change. That's too cumbersome. And we're proposing here a change that I agree with, that seniors see a mild reduction. That's fine. That's a perfectly good example, an illustration of, in this case, leaning towards access and delivering value to an important part of the community, you know, people who want to get water exercise. So that's fine with me. There's a reduction there. There's an increase in other age brackets in this proposal. So that's why I'm asking, you know, what are we trying to accomplish here? It sounds like a good part of the answer is we've got costs to offset, but I guess collectively, you know, I look to my colleagues to think this through, and the administration and the Board of Education help us think it through. But I'm sorry, Liz, I'm kind of meandering, but you're saying in this proposal, our proposed fees are what's best for Lakewood. Is that, when you say in that statement, is that because you think you're hitting a kind of a middle ground and increasing the revenue capture?
I don't even think we're middle ground. We're on the low end, and we all know the diversity of our community. Again, as I said before, we want to provide opportunity, but there's a cost for opportunity. And we haven't raised our rates in 11 years or more, and I believe it's time. So again, people want to get, what is it, your return on investment, for lack of a better term. If you're paying $6, $7 to get in, when you walk in, you want to see what's going to be happening down at Lakewood Park. And that is, and I believe that with Lakewood and what we have and what we've been doing and the cost raising all over the place, I don't care about that. I'm looking at what is going to be best for this pool, for our community, and the patrons. And again, if you just want to have it at $4, get rid of the 50 cents, which I really hope you get rid of we want to get rid of the 50 cents.
Count me on getting an even number.
I'm so happy that we'll get rid of that. But again, this is just our proposal based off of our surrounding community. But again, it is what we are looking at that we believe is a fair price to get into the pool.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Just one quick question, one point of clarification, then I'll turn it over to Madam Vice President. But timeline for this, I know we would need to have these sort of in place, passed by us. I think is there a process at the school board to get these approved as well?
Approval we don't approve
Okay.
any
So then
rates.
it's just, once we set the rates, they're set, there's no other approval, okay.
That's it.
And then, when do you need that approved by at the latest? Just so we know our timeline.
Well, our brochure, as I mentioned, goes out March 31st.
Okay, so in
And
March.
that's when it goes out
Oh, so it-
community-wide. Like that's when we have all of our pool information in it.
It needs to get to the printers well in advance of March
It'll have to go to the printer probably like the 25th.
Okay. No, good. And it's helpful to know. I just want to make sure, to Mr. Bullock's points, that we have we know what our timeline is here to get this done. And just so you know what's on the screen, just a Google sheet of mine. I just threw everything that I knew. I pulled those numbers off of the old numbers off of our website. So I hope they're accurate. If they're not, please correct me. And then the new numbers out of the resolution. And then I've just kind of been doodling there in the new council column F with some thoughts about what we might do for non-resident rates. I have to concur with Mr. Baker that I think we could probably push those a little bit so as to not be, when we're increasing rates on residents, which I agree with, by the way. I think you've done a great job at finding a good middle ground and we have to do something with rates. It's been a long time in order to compete and be right where we need to be, covering some of our costs at least. I don't think these are punitive. I think this is a great start. However, reducing rates for non-residents when we're increasing rates substantially for residents, I think, I'm not quite sure it's a little bit uneasy with me. Making sure that if we're going to increase rates for residents, that we're doing so in proportion with non-residents makes a little more sense. And I think to Mr. Baker's research, it looks like there is some bandwidth there to go a little bit higher on non-residents rates if we're going to be sticking with these rates for residents. So that's just my 2 cents. I'm sorry, Member Keppel, for jumping in there, but you have the floor.
Thanks. Well, I'm invading your committee, so that's fair enough. Thanks for joining us, Leslie, and sorry we're making you stand. Next time we'll have to make sure we have a
Nope,
chair
I'm
ready for you.
good. This is good for me. I'm good.
Okay, you have a
If I
standing
take a
desk?
lap,
Yeah,
if
right,
you give me a
sure,
mobile
all right.
mic, I'll take laps. I'm good, but thank you.
So I wanted to ask, you mentioned about the groups and just having the 3 groups that usually come. How do you distinguish, one, which groups get to come in? Like, what's the policy for that? And how do you distinguish between a group and a pool rental?
Okay, so a pool rental is outside of pool hours.
Okay.
That's outside of the normal operating hours. So for example, if we close at 7 o'clock, I'm just throwing out hours right now. If we close at 7 o'clock on Thursday, no, actually 8 o'clock on Thursday, the pool rental will be from say 8 to 9:30. So at no point in time do we do a private rental during our normal hours of operation. So that's the difference between the rental. With the groups, the 3 groups that I mentioned, which was Kids Connection, Lakewood Community Cares, and LCA, how we work with them is that they usually come for swimming. They do come for swimming lessons. We do set aside a time specifically, for them that we'll block off times for them to come and swim. And when they do come to open swims, we also make sure that we know the number of kids that are coming, who those kids are, because they have to purchase pool passes. They don't just come in. So every kid who comes from these has a pool pass. So they're going to be able to come in regardless, whether they're at camp or whether they are not. And we know ahead of time, and this is what we've done for several years, because a lot of times they'd show up at the front desk, it's 93 degrees out and we're dying in a building. Like, all right, come on, here you go. Here's a puddle to jump in. So with that, we are aware of that. But in regards to other, just say a large group, say all of us decided to have a pool party and show up at Foster Pool at 1, yeah, we're not taking a group like that. Like you have to either contact us and set aside a time like we have done with the other groups, or on the other side, we can just say, no, we do not accept any groups during our operating hours. They would have to be a private rental.
So how do you determine, let's say, what's the preschool everybody's kids go to? Yeah, like your childcare center. Like, let's say they wanted to do a group swim. Like, do you have a process for determining who is allowed to come in as a group? Like you're saying, they all have to have their own pool passes, but is that the requirement that each of the kid has to have their own pool passes?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be the distinguishing characteristic.
I mean, if you've ever had, so Kids Connection has 70 kids coming over sometimes. And imagine doing an individual transaction. No, they give us, it's like almost like this reel. Here's all the kids' pool pass numbers. We push them off to the side. They enter at their own little exit, so it's not interfering with the general public who's coming in, and we punch them all in. Their picture pops up so that we know who it is. So if another group decided to come up, one of the things we also look at is, both majority of these programs, they're Lakewood residents. So, but I mean, we've had someone already contact us that has a daycare on Triscuit, and we told them no. They're like, all right, well, we're going to come on Mondays and Fridays. And we're like, no, you're not. So, I mean, I don't have a problem saying no. I've been told to say yes more often, and Mark will shake his head to that because I'm very protective of, what we have. So and I mentioned this to Councilman Baker earlier, Matt and I are sitting down putting together policies so we have it in writing and can really push it out there before, Foster Pool even opens. We want to have it out months in advance, having it at the pool on the site itself, little QR code, hey, here's our rules, policies, and procedures. And we'll even connect it in our booklet and all that stuff to make sure that everyone is aware of what we are going to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat back a little bit to make sure I understood that correctly, that if another Lakewood-based group had students or members where they're going to get every child a pass, they could still do what these other centers
If they contacted us prior to.
prior to coming. Got it. Okay. And then what about, aren't there adult groups that book lanes, or is that a different practice?
So that's in the morning. So we do have our masters lap swimmers, and they're early morning. They are there, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock? Night, I'm sorry. Masters is at night, but we do have our lap, there's 3 different groups that we have gone to see in the morning, and we have our ladies who come in and walk, and then we have our people who like to float and just kind of hang out in the middle, and then we do have another lap group. And those are early morning at Foster. We have our swim team, our Lakewood Recreation swim team, they're there, and these are outside of the general operating hours. So it's not taking away time from people who want to come with their family to visit the pool. It's not taking away from when we program our swim lessons, or, and it's not at the time of our private party rentals.
Okay. So the master's room at night, though, that's during the normal hours, so, no?
That's a rental.
Okay. They've swum laps when they're there, so it must have been.
So during the open hours, we do have a couple of lane lines in for people who want to do laps. So if people don't mind hearing the splashing and all the other hectic party that's going on, we will have lanes that are up so that on the far east side, during open swim, there will be 4 to 5 lanes that are lapped over on the east end of the pool, where on the west end, which is the shallower end, will be open for general swim.
And then, has there been discussion, so, if it's okay with Mr. Chair, different topic. So fees being, and I apologize, you may have already talked about this before I came in, but the fees being the same for both Foster and Bex. Has there been discussion about using fees to either incentivize use of one or the other? If we, do we anticipate that Foster will be higher this year, or will Bex continue to be like a lot of the neighborhood folks? We will, they can walk there, they're going to continue to walk there. So that's one part, and then the other part is also with hours. So if there are highly sought-after hours, is there any thought about incentivizing using pricing to use at less busy hours to try to manage the flow of traffic, for instance?
So in our discussions, we had actually proposed 2 different rates for Bex and Foster, and it was decided that we were just going to keep it as one, because hopefully down the line, we're going to be having this conversation, say 5 years for Bex Pool, and then the rates are set at that time. In regards to ebb and flow of attendance, and it was discussed earlier, if it's raining, depending on if it's an 80-degree rain or if it's like a 70-degree rain, both pools, most of the time due to attendance, they'll close. But if it's a 95-degree day and it is hot and there's not a cloud in the sky, it doesn't matter what pool you go to. It'll be full. Incentivizing people to come at different times, when we've talked to other community pools, such as, the ones that I provided the spreadsheet with, like it's sometimes on a hot Saturday between 9 and 11, there's no one. It doesn't matter how hot it is, there's no one in here. So no matter what you're charging, if, people just aren't coming during that time. So if we were gonna say have a BOGO when it's cool, to me, that would be a lot of work. And, if someone comes up, well, it was 65 degrees yesterday and I was in for this and it's 65 today and everyone's here, how come I'm not getting the same? It's just, I want to keep it slow and steady.
Right. Yeah, I guess my question is more about timing in terms of if we've got a whole lot of seniors who want to swim and who can come at, 11, and then we have folks getting, I don't know what the busy times are, you're the expert on that, but I'm just saying, I'm just.
In the past, everything has worked out. Like even if, say, we did have 50 seniors came and wanted to walk in the pool, and then, or we had, obviously we're going to have a capacity limit no matter what. But at no point in time have we run into something so drastic, and I'm never going to say never, I just said at this point we haven't, that if something like that occurred, it would be the first time where we have a clash of groups, like, 50 people, they want to walk over here, and well, the moms with young kids want to walk in the same spot, and now we have a differentiation of opinion, and what usually our guards and our staff are able to handle that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. So there's a couple ways we could handle this. Seeing as we don't have too much time, I did make a suggestion here. I'll even highlight the column that I just typed in on the spreadsheet on the screens. That being this column. I mean, this is just based on the conversation we had right now, based on some comments and some thoughts of my own, as well as Mr. Baker's and Mr. Bullock's. And that is just to address this slight reduction in non-residential rates for both the 2, 3, and the 2 and 3 category of people for the season passes, increasing that so that it would be a net increase to kind of reflect the fact that we are charging our residents a little bit more. And again, I totally understand. I think it is time we increase these fees in order to offset some of these increasing costs. It makes sense. Again, all of the data provided makes plenty of sense. I think there's plenty of justification for doing this. So any comments from my colleagues on some of these suggestions? If it's a little too haphazard, we could, of course, ask the rec department to come back and share with us, some adjusted rates in this category, if that makes a little more sense.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So here's my suggestion. Why don't we plan to come back in a week and schedule even as brief as a 15-minute committee hearing tonight's Monday, right? We'd had President's Day weekend. Exactly. And then with the intent of calling votes on the ordinance in committee that night, and you could be ready as early as the full council meeting a week from now to be able to potentially act on it. But that way we give ourselves a little bit of a huddle. This has been a good, detailed-oriented discussion. A lot of different variables are in the mix here. I'm still kind of bringing my own thinking into focus. To answer your immediate question, I'm open to supporting a motion from colleagues to make a potential change. Want to think about it a little bit further, but
Yeah, okay.
it's helpful, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. I'll ask our clerk, is there time next week? And then I'll have you weigh in, Mr. Baker, before the council meeting to have a quick Public Works meeting, should we want? Okay. I could certainly be here at 5:45 or 5:30. I don't know if my colleagues could, but Mr. Baker, I'll let you weigh in on this.
5:30 probably ain't going to work for me and my family, but 5:45 I could probably do. Yeah, and I appreciate, Councilman Ritter, you putting this together. I'm curious if so Beechwood has rates up to $10 for kids, I think, for non-residents. So I'm wondering if we can't, and I'm wondering if like having $9, it's easier just to have a $10 bill if we're going to kind of get ourselves in a situation where you're going to have a briefcase of singles as opposed to 5s or 10s. It's probably a little easier than quarters. So I'd be okay pushing that to 10. And then, there is, so for example, Westlake has 110 for their non-residents for a season pass for single. Bay Village is 106. So I do think we could go higher there for non-residents, but I'm not tied to that. I just think the stratification provides a little bit of a justification to our residents as the kind of what we're doing, and it also protects the investment in the sense that we're going to make sure that we're putting $5 million in, so we're thoughtful about how we're programming it. So I would appreciate maybe this week to dig into these and we can try to get a quick 15-minute meeting, because I don't want to stay in your guys' way as far as timing.
Would it be amenable to the committee to then kind of let the rec department take back some of this feedback, including some of the numbers we talked about, and see if we can't come back and have them draft us a new version, or would you rather us draft a version for them?
I think that's up to the rec department and the chair. What I would say is that, they've given us their recommendation. They've done a lot of good research. They've gotten a lot of justification to kind of justify an overall increase, right? Why are we increasing this? I think we've established a very good record of why it's necessary. 10 years is a long time. Costs have increased. We have a new capital improvement there. So I think it's just a question of what we want to do, but welcome the rec department's thoughts.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bullock.
I think you have done a nice job pulling the information together, organizing it in a side-by-side, which is helpful. Frankly, I would love a little more data beyond it, but if you were to work closely with whomever we need to work with, and then we come back here with one or two potential substitute alternatives, that to me would be an effective way to do it. We could all make very efficient use of the 15-minute meeting, and then hopefully plan to be complete with that. I did want to ask the Recreation Department for a little bit more data. Could you share, not right this minute on the spot, but as we continue this, the proportion of pool passes versus at the gate, by numbers, by revenue? I don't want you to have to do a lot of homework, but on the other hand, I'm hoping you may have that at your fingertips, just to give some proportional sense. As I'm running these numbers, I, as a consumer, probably would just go straight for a pool pass, right?
No, we'll be able to do that.
Okay, that's just helpful to get some sense of.
Do you want it separated by pool?
Sure, if that's easy. I don't want anybody.
When I give my presentations to the Board of Education, I provide all that information.
Yeah,
on
and
pools.
you don't even have to make the data fancy, just that much more detail, I think
it's gonna look nice.
is helpful, yeah. And then the other question is, like, the swim lessons and the rent, this is helpful, proposal, but I don't have any comparison basis for like what, on this nice chart, we have the old, the new, and the increase. we don't have that, though, for the swim lessons and the rentals.
We can do that.
Okay, that's helpful stuff, thank you. And I think as my colleagues have been saying too, it's good practice for us to then be able to say with a straight face to the public whether we've done a thorough enough job and established a record for whatever changes we're considering.
No,
Thanks.
absolutely. I will say that originally, my non-resident cost was exorbitant. So I had to be put in check for that. So it has been adjusted, and we'll be able to, if you want, we'll update and give you at least another so that you guys can compare with, what we have.
Well, before we break, I want to give my other colleagues and Councilwoman Marks and Councilwoman Keppel, if you have any further thoughts on this, just want to give you the space to weigh in.
I'm in favor of an increase in the cost of the pool passes. I think it's long overdue. So I'm in favor of that.
Thank you. No thoughts? Okay. Well, good. So then I will take the committee's thoughts to heart here, and what we'll do, Leslie, maybe this week we'll connect, and I'll take another look at this, then I'll get it over to you. We'll set up a time, maybe just chat over the phone about, run it by your folks, make sure that we're not too way off base, and we can have a conversation, then we'll bring back hopefully just one version, council taking a look at, and if there's any kind of leeway, if we discover that there's some room to move around, then we'll bring that to the committee's attention and make adjustments
Right,
that
sounds
night, and then hopefully pass it on Monday. Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be gorgeous.
Very good. Well, again, thank you all. Thank you very much to the other members of the Recreation Department for being here. We'll go ahead and defer this to the next meeting I don't think we need to vote on that, but that'll go ahead and conclude this Public Works and Sustainability Committee meeting. And we'll have another committee meeting here in just a minute, the Health and Human Services Committee. So thank you again.
Thank you.